Hey guys, I've just been at an American guy's house who I haven't actually heard from for a long time, and then suddenly this morning received a message from him freaking out. Can you come visit? Can you come visit? And haven't seen him for a long time, but he does watch these videos, and he'd watched the one that we made recently about the pension service and about how what they'd done to another guy we told you about, who they threatened fairly severely. First of all, they threatened to shut down his bank accounts if he didn't go and visit them, didn't go and have a meeting with them. And then when he did have the meeting, they threatened to have his visa taken away, his permanent residence status taken away if he didn't pay his $4,000 bill within the 24 hours. So they were fairly severe with him, and our American friend had seen that video. So that's why this morning he sent a message and said, I need your help, can you come and have a look at this? So what's happened is he's received a letter a couple of days ago, and apparently what's happening, we have on our English Friendly directory, we have a couple of English Friendly accountants, and after the last video, well actually before the last video and after the last video, we actually asked one of those accountants a few questions, and one of them was, we asked him if he thinks there's any connection between the My Number that they brought in, which is the tax file system, or the social security system, as it's called in some countries, that they brought in a couple of years ago. We asked him if he thought there was a connection between that and this current crackdown on people who aren't paying their pension, and he said yes. So we suspected that was the case because, and he said, we contacted him again this week, and he said that 15 years ago, if you weren't paying your pension, chances are they wouldn't even catch you because the system was so untidy, so much bureaucracy and such an untidy system that they usually wouldn't catch people who weren't paying their pension anyway. He said, but if they did catch someone and started to hassle them about payment, usually he would just ring them up. He'd ring up the pension service and say, look, this guy doesn't have any money and can't really afford to pay, because the law says you've got to pay 2 years back pay, which is about $4,000. And he said he'd just ring them up and say, this guy hasn't got any money to make the back payments, and they just go, oh, okay then, and they wouldn't worry about it. He said 15 years ago that's how loose the system was. But apparently what's happening is the government's putting pressure on the pension service for them to start collecting payments from people, because they know that the population's aging and they need to start getting some money in. And with this new tax file number thing, obviously the computer just spits out all the people. It just compares the two lists, the people that have been enrolled in the pension service and the people that are earning money. And if you're earning money but you're not on the pension service, they'll soon send you a letter. So what's happened is this American guy received a letter from them. So interestingly, the pension service is national, but it's administered by different offices in different cities, of course, and it seems that their styles are really different, because our other friend got really threatened. He got threatened severely, didn't he? We told you that whole story. But this guy, all he got was 2 days ago, he got in the mail, he got some paper, lots of paper, of course, naturally, it's Japan, there's got to be a lot of paper, and the pension booklet. The pension booklet is sort of like an old style bank book. So it's a little booklet, and that you keep that, and that keeps a record of your pension payments and so on. And so he got a bunch of paperwork and a pension booklet in his name, which is subtle, isn't it? And he got that 2 days ago, right? And a form to fill out. So he had to fill out this form and send it back to them. So apparently he'd filled out the form, and he just sent it, apparently. And then in the post, 2 envelopes came, both of them from the pension service, and he opened them up, and between the 2 envelopes there was 17 invoices and 2 statements, and he couldn't work it out. And the tax bills here are the same. When you get a tax bill here, the system's really messy. The system's really messy, and it can be really confusing. And there's a few things that are confusing. One is, what they'll do is, if you have a payment that has to be made, what they'll sometimes do is they'll give you 12 invoices. So let's make it round figures to make it easy to understand. So let's say that you have to pay $2,400 in tax, or in health insurance, or in some other payment, some other fee. What they'll do is they'll give you 12 invoices of $200 each, and you can pay one invoice every month for 12 months. But also in the same envelope, they'll give you 4 invoices for $600 each, which means that you could choose to pay every 3 months, every quarter. And they'll also include one more invoice for the total amount. And what they love the paper. They love the paper. So then what you're supposed to do? They love the paper and hate the trees, apparently. So what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to choose which option you want. Do you want the pay by the month option, or do you want the pay quarterly, to pay every 3 months option, or the one payment option? And then what you're supposed to do is choose which option you want and throw the other invoices away, right? And just keep so you got to pay by the month, throw the others away. You want to pay, so you end up throwing a lot of paper away, basically. And it's just the way they do it. The tax system's the same, the healthcare system's the same, a lot of the government payment systems are the same. So that's what they've done with him with this. But what made it more complicated was they also had payments going back 2 years from now, which is what we expected. That's what we talked about in the last video. That's the maximum they can do. If you haven't paid your pension, and this guy's been here for a lot of years, and if you haven't paid your pension and you've been here more than 2 years, the maximum that they can make you back pay is 2 years. So that's what we expect. But it was just really complicated because they had a couple of old big bills to cover the last 2000, and because it's all in Japanese years, right? So this is the year 30, and they had one bill from the year 29, 2 bills from the year 29, and 1 bill from the year 28, and then a statement for that didn't match the total amount on the invoices. So the invoices didn't match with the statement, and the payment due dates didn't match with the statement. And one of them actually had a payment due date of the year 32, which is 2020. And so that said on the invoice, it said that he had to pay by 2020, which is giving him 2 years to pay. And just, I suspected, he is all confused. Do you think this means I've got 2 years? And no, I don't think so. And then the other ones, then he had another, 12 invoices for this year and for the 6 months from now. And same thing, half of them were due each month, and half of them were overdue, and then some of them were overdue, and then some of them again had the year 32 written on them. And then when we checked that second statement, that statement had the year 30 written on it, which means that they're due now. So you can see why he was stressed. He was stressed out. So I've been sitting there for the last hour with a calculator and pencil and paper and writing it all down and checking it all. And of course, it's correct that the figures that are due are correct. Those 32s are wrong, obviously. It's not due in 2 years' time. So this is a bit of a heads up video that this is another way that they might, if you're in Japan and you haven't paid your pension payments, this is another way they might go about approaching you about it. And if you come to Japan and you work in Japan and you have to handle your pension or your healthcare or your tax yourself, this is likely what you're going to be up against. And the key is just be cool. We have found a couple of good English-friendly accountants, and there's one, usually in Japan you have to pay, if you have an accountant, you have to pay them every month. And usually it's quite a bit. Usually it might be $100 or $200 a month you've got to pay them, irrelevant of what they do. And so it's feels like a bit of a rip-off to some people, but that's just the way it is. But we did find one guy that's prepared just to bill you for the consultation, which means that if you just had to do a quick tax return or you had a question, you could go and see him and just pay him. But the key with these things is when they turn up, just try and relax, because obviously it's stressful. I mean, the guy got $4,000 worth of bills, you know, and so obviously that's going to be stressful for him. And it was so confusing. It's so unnecessarily confusing. You know, there's just, they always, it's sort of like they think that a good bureaucracy should be complicated. That accountant we were speaking to this week said, because I made a comment to him about how complicated everything is, and he said that because the tax system and the healthcare system payments and the pension system payment thing is so complicated, it keeps him in a job. He said that's why he has so many customers, and that's why his practice is so busy, because no one can understand it, is what he said. No one can understand it, and that's why he's so busy. So, and it's true, but the key is, if you do end up in this situation here, or any situation where you're dealing with one of these agencies, tax office or the pension service or healthcare insurance people, or someone, you're likely to get tons of paper, and of course it's all in Japanese. The guy that got the threatening letter actually got one that was in 3 or 4 languages. But this guy, it was all in Japanese. There was nothing in English at all. And then the way that this unnecessarily a lot of paper. I mean, it really should have been. It could have been much simpler. Just one piece of paper, one invoice, really, for the last 12 months would have been simpler. It's a monthly thing, so it doesn't have to be complex. And the payment's the same every month, so it doesn't have to be complex. But you know, they love making everything complex because it makes it seem official. If it's simple, then it's not really proper. It has to be complex to be official, you know. And so, if you do get stuff like that here, just try and stay calm and relaxed, and just look at it and lay it all out. We laid it all out on a table. That would have been a good photo, actually, but got to respect the guy's privacy. But we had these laid out all over a table, covering a table, and then put them all into chronological order, so that we could see, okay, here we go. This is 2 years ago. Okay, starting from August. Okay, here we go. And we laid them all out, and then we could see what they'd done. And then there was the extra ones. That was what was confusing him as well, was that the extra ones, because they had the big one in there, so they'd have 6 months of bills, and then they'd have one bill for the same period, which is sort of silly because it's too late to pay them monthly anyway. So they've basically done the old system for his situation. So very confusing, and very stressful. So yeah, at this time, anybody, if you're in Japan and you've been here for a little while and you're not enrolled in the pension system, they're coming for you. Pretty safe to assume, because you know, that's out of the people that we know. Out of the people that we know who aren't enrolled in the pension system, well, that's 2 right there that are busted. So it just seems like now with the my number, that it's going to be automatic now. So chances are everyone who's not enrolled is going to be getting the same mail. And there's not really much point in fighting it, as we talked about on the last video. If you're going to be returning to your home country, you should be able to get a refund anyway. And if you're going to be staying here, well, you know, you might as well pay it. They've got you. The bottom line is, despite anything else, whether it adds up for you or not, whether it works for you financially or not, it's a law. So if that letter turns up in the post, there's no decisions to be made, really. They've really got you. And the different agencies, the tax office and the pension service and the immigration department, usually don't communicate very well with each other, but they can. And that means there is something in our visas and in our status, in our permanent resident status and so on, that says that we must abide by all the laws. And they threatened that other guy and said that if he didn't pay that money straight away, that he could lose his permanent resident status. And it's true. There was a horrible threat to make, because he didn't say he wasn't going to pay it. So it was a pretty unnecessary and unpleasant thing to say to him, but it is true. They can, if they want to, they can tell the immigration service this guy's not paying his bills, and they can take away his permanent residency visa. So bottom line is, you know, if you get the bill, just pay it. Just pay it. As for whether you enroll or not when you come here, well, even the accountant guy wouldn't answer that one, because I sort of said, well, so what's your advice? If someone comes here from another country, should they enroll straight away? Because it does, until now, it's taken a long time for him to catch up with people. And he wouldn't answer it. He said, oh, we don't advise people to do it or to not do it. So he's not having anything to do with answering that question. It is a tough one. The interesting point is there is no penalty. That $4,000 is back payments. It's not a penalty. So for people who are going to be here until they retire, it's going towards guaranteeing them a full pension. You know, you have to have made the payments for 10 years, total of 10 years, to get the full pension. So there's that. But yeah, it is a complicated system, there's no doubt about it. There's definitely, if you're not up with all this stuff, it definitely is worth it if you can find an accountant that you can ask questions of now and again. It definitely helps. If you're lucky, a lot of the people that come here and work for companies that come here and work for the English factories and things like that, they tend to, the companies, big companies tend to look after all this. And so you usually don't have to worry about it, and there's no decisions to be made. They'll just automatically, often they'll pay your pension for you, or they'll pay half and you'll pay half, or there's all sorts of different situations. But usually if you come here and work for a big company, they look after all that. They look after your pension, your tax, your healthcare, insurance, all that stuff, and you just get what's left over at the end, basically. So you won't have to worry about it. So it depends on what you're doing here and how much of your own stuff you have to look after.